Let's create a first loop in this manifold. Let me put that higher again. Now, when I want to finish pipe segment somewhere close to another connector, I have to watch out so that it doesn't try to connect where I don't want it to connect. In this case, if I try to finish a new segment close to endpoint of an existing pipe segment, I might get an error. So let me try again. I'll finish a little further than the previous pipe so that they don't try to connect to one another. Because the general functionality of a connector is that it will try to push connections between elements. Now let's say we want both of these pipes to turn here towards the floor to create a loop. Gonna move to the floor plan. Close these. I'm going to use a couple of tools now that control the temporary visibility of elements. So first one, I'm clicking tab to select a specific element that I'm interested in. So here it is on the drawing. I'm clicking here to switch to the active view and make this view my active view now. And I press HI on the keyboard. That's temporary hide isolate. So this means that whatever was my selection becomes an isolated element. If you see this blue frame around the view and the words temporary hide / isolate in top left corner, this means that some elements have been hidden in that view. Now I click on this element, click CS or create similar. As you can see, it snaps to that position. I will change the elevation to, let's say, minus 100 millimeters. So if R0 is the floor finish, let's say this is under that. As you can see, it automatically created elbow here. But I drew it in the wrong direction. So again, let's try to fix this. So now I'm gonna select these and use the rotate tool. Gonna place the center of rotation. My center of rotation doesn't want to snap to the central point of the pipe, so let's do it differently. I'm gonna delete this elbow, extend this pipe, and use trim tool. And this looks correct. Okay, now let's do the same for the second pipe. So now I'm pressing HR, that's hide reset, so it brings back the visibility of all the elements. HI again, create similar, oops, 0. Oh, sorry, not 0, that was supposed to be minus 100. And here we would have a collision if we left it like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create one of these pipes. I'm gonna push a little to the side, create an S-shape pipe, and the best view for that would be the section. So actually, let me delete these elements. Again, use the isolate tool. And now start the pipe again from a connector, but on the pipe. That's probably a little further than it needs to be. Let's see. So this is the pipe we want to connect to. And I think this goes correct. Let me double check if they're both at minus 100. Yes, they are. So that's one of the examples how you can avoid collisions. And also an example of how we can use a few views at once to create our design. Let's try to create another collision and resolve it. So let's say we have a pipe that goes here, and these pipes have to jump over it. Okay. So one more time. Draw pipe, changing the elevation to 0, changing the elevation to -100. I don't have to press enter here. Let's see now. That looks correct. It's actually a little too high, so we can just manually drag it down. Just make sure you have enough space for flexible bends. If you go too low, you will get an error. And now we can select just these elements and copy them. And if I expanded this, it should snap to it. And these elements look like they're properly connected, but I'm just going to press tab a couple of times to make sure they are. Yes, if I press tab and they all light up in blue, this means they are connected. You could do this shape, of course, also in section. Not this section, but the one that we created before. So instead of drawing in plan, I can draw it in section. Just draw it like I want to. I can also adjust. It's adjusting the middle elevation while drawing in section might be a little less precise, but we can also always make adjustments later on. Both methods are fine. You can use whichever one you want. Okay, now we need these same pipes from two other loops. Let's say we're gonna just do the first part of our layout. So I'm gonna select everything and get the manifold outside of our selection. Let me just make sure with filter tool that we have only selected pipes and pipe fittings. Okay, this is correct. And now I'm going to use copy tool to copy these elements to other connectors. Okay, so we see an issue here. I'm making some adjustment to the layout to quickly resolve this collision. Looks like there's no collision now. Let me run an interference check just to be sure. To run an interference check, go to Collaborate tab, Coordinate panel, click on Interference check, run interference check. We are choosing elements from current project. If we had linked models, they would show up here. And let's see if there are any interferences between our pipes. There are no interferences detected, so it looks like there's no collision here. Let's just see to make sure if this works. I'm gonna create a collision here. Okay, looks like there is a collision here, so one more time. And there we go. You can see that Revit recognizes which elements are in the collision and it lights them up in the drawing. So it creates this report where each branch represents a collision, and then it breaks down to information about which elements are in the collision. You can also click show, which shows them on the drawing. If you click here, then it will show another drawing where the collision is visible, or the elements that create a collision are visible. So this is a pretty neat tool to quickly check if we haven't accidentally created any collisions in our model. Another thing that is useful when drawing pipes is the ability to draw sloped pipes. So when I go to pipe placing tool, in the contextual tab in the offset connection panel, you have these three options: slope off, slope up, slope down. So far, I've been using a slope off. Let's see what happens if I click slope up. I'll adjust the value of the slope. So now when I click on the pipe, it gives me information about the height of the connectors and about what is the slope. From here, I can manually change the value either of the height of the connectors or of the slope. Just remember, when you go again to pipe placing mode, it automatically picks the option you used last time. So make sure you click back to slope off. Another layout resolution that Revit will propose is this one. If I create two pipes, say one is at the height 0 and another one 50 centimeters. If I make them connect, Revit might propose this kind of solution, for example. So not only elbow, but also T will be created here. Another way to create a T or an elbow is to use an existing pipe fitting. For example, let's change this T into elbow and this elbow into a T. To do that, we have to delete this element, click on the T, and click this minus symbol here. And this turns it into elbow. To do it the other way around, click on an elbow and we click on the symbol of a plus, this one or this one, depending on in what direction T we want. So let's do it like this, for example. Now take a look at this element, and if you want, you can pause the video and try to recreate it in Revit by yourself. So a U shape where one side is a little elevated. There are a couple of ways to do it, so take your time. Let me show you a few examples of how you can approach it. So here I first create the flat shape of this. I'm just gonna locate this. And from here, I can, for example, use rotate tool. And just rotate it a little bit. Now I'm using the slope off and slope up to create shape. It's another way to do it. A third method is creating two pipe segments, then changing their height so that one is lower than the other. Then switching to a section view and connecting them. Just remember, in this method, you cannot fully control which connector you're picking, the front one or the back one. So here we have three methods of how we can create such shape if needed. Let me delete this. And let me actually, this tool that I wanted to show here is called Show Disconnects. So go to Analyze tab and you check Systems panel, click on this icon, Show Disconnects, pick Pipes and click OK. Now you can see a lot of these triangles showed up in my drawing. So what does it mean? Everywhere where Revit finds a connector that is not connected to anything, it gives you this warning. So as you can see, the first pipes that we created from our connector are properly connected, but these were just copied. They weren't snapped into a proper connection. To fix this, we have to click on the pipe on the connector symbol and move it, or really just barely touch it, and it will snap. Now these elements are connected. As you can see, these ones are not. Pressing tab a couple of times will also help you find out which elements are connected and which are not. But Show Disconnects definitely does it more precisely. So let's properly connect all these pipes. You really barely have to click on your pipe to be able to easily force that connection. This would normally connect to our risers, so just leave it like that. And here our loops would be furtherly designed. Now, actually, let me delete all these pipes, because that first collision I showed you, actually, we can resolve it only by changing manifold settings. When I select the manifold, I can see some options that are specific for Uponor family of manifolds. One of them is called displacement lower bar. And actually, let me show you on the section what it does. If I click this checkbox, you can see that one of the rows have moved a little bit to the side. So now I can create pipes straight down from the connectors and then have them on the same level and have no collision whatsoever. I'm going to quickly recreate the steps I showed before and also reassign graphic overrides for piping systems. Let's do an overview of what other special options we have in our manifolds. We can add actuators. We can activate inspection cube visibility. So this is not an actual element, but it's a representation of the space that have to be left in front of the manifold to allow for inspections. So this is the clearance cube. The exchange lower upper bar. This is changing the supply and return. If you would like to exchange a lower upper bar, remember to use this option before you draw any pipes connected to connectors on the manifold, because what might happen is that information from the pipe will override the settings for exchange lower upper bar functionality. And swap. The swap function puts the connection to risers on the other side of the manifold.